Edward Brown, host of The Best of Investing, here to remind you to tune in this week on Saturday at 8 p.m. Our guest is going to be Gary Covert. You're not going to want to miss this show. That's The Best of Investing on Saturday at 8 p.m. Welcome. You're listening to The Best of Investing. I'm your host, Edward Brown. Our phone number is 888-912-1190. Use that number to answer the trivia questions for a 5-pack tanning certificate given away during this show. And that certificate's not sponsored by the radio station, but by Tan Bella Tanning Salon, with 2 locations in San Francisco and 1 in Marin. Today's trivia theme is miscellaneous trivia. I do want to make a mention here for Pacific Private Money's fund called the Arrival Fund. It is a limited time only. It's paying 10% backed by First Deeds of Trust. You got to check them out. Check out Pacific Private Money for more details. Let them know that you heard about their fund on The Best of Investing. And this 6 months is, they also have a Freedom Fund that's paying 10% for 6 months, but that time may be running out soon. So check them out, pacificprivatemoney.com, and don't forget to mention that you heard about them on the Best of Investing radio show. Today we have a special guest, Zachary Beach of Smart Real Estate Coach. Zachary is a 3-time Amazon best-selling author of Real Estate on Your Terms, New Rules of Real Estate Investing, and Sell with Authority for Real Estate Investors. Hey, Zach, great to have you on.
Edward, I appreciate you having me on here.
Absolutely. Okay, so first, tell us about the books that you wrote.
Yeah, for sure. My father-in-law actually and my business partner wrote the first one, Real Estate on Your Terms, coming out of the 2008 crash. He was trying to get back involved into real estate investing. I don't know if you've had him on the show, Chris Prefontaine.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
At that time, he was trying to figure out how to get back involved in real estate investing as he got crushed during 2008. Yeah. We then stepped in as a family business. I ended up joining him back in about a decade ago now, where I was a bartender and personal trainer and had 0 real estate experience. So we paired up. So we revised that book. Me and my brother-in-law, I added some additional chapters to that original one. And that is our main book. And we'll make sure that we can give it away here at some point in time, because that walks through our exact business model. And then as the market continued to evolve, we wanted to continue to produce more up-to-date books as well. So the New Rules for Real Estate Investors was really a combination of lots of like-minded real estate investors to help really work through today's current market. And then the last one, we really gave it an entire new angle when it came to the books that we were producing, because we really aimed at everything that's associated with being a real estate investor and how that real estate investor can position themselves in the market as the authority to continue to get more real estate deals as they continue to evolve as that authority.
Well, you have to update these books just because the laws change. I'm just thinking about like New York. It's so hard to get rid of a tenant, or a borrower if you needed to foreclose. I'm dealing with some of that now, and it's taking forever, and it's ridiculous. I don't get it.
New York is not tenant friendly at all.
Yeah. It's very challenging. You're located. It's funny because I remember Chris. He's got that nice Boston accent, right?
Yeah, he's got it's a lot worse than mine, for sure.
Oh, that's so funny. It's so funny. I work with a guy he's Vietnamese, but he's been America. He's born in America, right? So he doesn't have any accent, and his name is Nam. And so when he was telling someone one time, he goes, "Yeah, my name is Nam." They go, "Wow, what part of Boston are you from?" And he goes, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, you have a really strong accent." He goes, "Your name's Norm, right?" And you say Nam. And he goes, "No, my name is Nam."
Sounds like us Boston people for sure.
I'll tell you what. Let's go to our first commercial trivia break here. Excuse me. Let's see here. First of all, I do want to make a mention. For over 30 years, the SF Bay Adventures has been the premier boating event and tour resource for the San Francisco Bay. For private events such as birthdays, weddings, smaller groups, or individuals can also buy tickets to public tours such as the Sunday morning wildlife sales under the Golden Gate Bridge. Visit SF Bay sfbayadventures.com or email info@sfbayadventures.com to book your adventure. All right. Zach, as a reminder, if you know the answer to this question, don't say anything yet. We'll let you answer it when you get back. What monument has the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome? Call 888-912-1190. First caller with the correct answer wins that tanning certificate. Stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my special guest, Zach Beach. And our first trivia question, which monument has the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome? What do you think, Zach?
I have a feeling that's somewhere in Europe. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, the Pantheon.
The Pantheon, that's it.
Yeah, the world's largest unreinforced. And this is interesting because I have a silly joke of the week, and it's just kind of interesting because you happen to have a family business. So here's our funny little joke here. So a very successful businessman had a meeting with his new son-in-law. "I love my daughter, and now I welcome you into the family," said the man. "To show you how much we care for you, I'm making you a 50-50 partner in the business. All you have to do is go to the factory every day and learn the operations." Son-in-law interrupted, "I hate factories. I can't stand the noise." "I see," replied the father-in-law. "Well, then you'll work in the office and take charge of some of the operations." "I hate office work," said the son-in-law. "I can't stand being stuck behind a desk all day." "Well, wait a minute," said the father-in-law. "I just made you half owner of a money-making organization, but you don't like factories and you won't work in an office. What am I going to do with you?" "Easy," said the young man. "Buy me out." I like that.
The way that guy thinks.
Yeah, that's smart. But at least he's got some brains there. All right. So, what is buying real estate on creative financing? That's one of our topics we wanted to cover.
Yeah. Buying real estate on creative financing really just means really three things, right? It means that you don't use banks, you don't put down large down payments, and you don't personally sign and guarantee debt. As I was mentioned earlier, my business partner got crushed in 2008 and he wanted to get back into real estate, and he couldn't get back into real estate the way that most people originally do, right? You usually have your own money, or you're raising money, or you have your own credit to go acquire properties. Well, that was impossible. So we originally started out with, we had to do this out of necessity, but then we eventually started creating rules around it, because as we started to grow and scale our business, we thought, let's never have banks ever have to call us if the market went up, down, or sideways. Let's get the most amount of return on each and every one of these deals. So let's not put very little money into deals. Okay. And then let's never have to worry about begging banks to give us loans. So instead, we now acquire properties on 3 different strategies, which have those rules attached to them.
Okay. One of them I have to think has to be seller financing.
Yes. There are 3 strategies. You guessed it. Number 1 is seller financing. And really all seller financing means that instead of going to a bank to get the financing, you have the seller, who's the original owner, finance the property for you. And then they're now secured by a mortgage on that property. And that's assuming, and when we talk about seller finance, just to keep things like very linear, seller financing would be debt-free properties. It's roughly 30 to 40% of the properties in the United States are debt-free. So these are great people that are in a good financial scenario, and they're just looking to maximize the profits on their house.
Yeah, otherwise you have to do wraparound mortgages and all that kind of crazy stuff. So if you give us an example, so let's say there's a house that's $100,000. Typically, how would you structure your offer? How much of a down payment? How long a term would you ask the seller to carry back, and at what interest rate?
Yeah, great question. So anytime we go buy a piece of real estate, really, we have to identify 2 things specifically. Number 1, we have to identify the motivation of the seller. And I'll kind of put this together and answer your question kind of the long way. Once we identify the motivation, right, it's like, where's the seller going? Why are they selling? And by when? So as soon as we identify that, then we'll go see what the finances are on the property. So if it's debt-free, then we just need to identify what's the insurance that's going to need to be on the property, the taxes. And then from there, we then have what we call these 4 quadrants. So as I'm having a conversation with a seller, I'm identifying what's most important to them from these 4 quadrants. These 4 quadrants consist of purchase price, down payment, if any, monthly, which could be interest rate, and then term, meaning
Mhm.
like the length of time.
Sure.
Once we have the conversation, because it's really a collaboration with the seller to see what can solve their problem, and then if so, can I make it profitable? So as we're having that conversation, we're identifying what is most important to the seller, and then we'll create the terms around that. So if the seller tells me, well, price is what's most important to me, okay, well then great. So if price is most important, then we probably won't put down much of a down payment. We'll more than likely create a monthly payment that's at 0% interest rate, which is about 80 to 90% of our seller financing deals. And then we'll identify from there how long of a time frame the seller is willing to hold on to that mortgage. And then that's when they'll create that final term length.
Oh,
So
that's great. If you can do 0% financing and stretch it out to, let's say, even 30 years, you could say, I'll pay you 10 times what this thing, what you're asking for it.
for sure, yeah, that would be like your basic installment sale, right? Because every
Yeah.
month I'm making a payment, it's going directly to the purchase price.
Yeah.
When we look at 0% interest rates, and I would say that a typical time frame for a 0% interest rate with a balloon is going to be somewhere around like 60 to 84 months,
Okay.
or shorter, right? So somewhere in that range. Once we start to get past up to like the 10-year terms, there usually is interest associated with it as well. And there's
Yeah.
many different ways to skin a cat, as they say.
Sure.
So it's really about creative financing is really about solving problems that the
Yeah.
traditional market can't solve. So once we identify what's really important to the seller, then we can build the terms of that deal. Because I mean, we can create it so many different ways.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And I got to think that if you put down a little down payment, they're going to be a little concerned that if you default, they're just going to get the property back and have to redo this again. So, I mean, I understand all the nuances of it. Very interesting. Okay, here's our second trivia question. It's kind of interesting here. Which U.S. state's name is misspelled on the Liberty Bell? Call 888-912-1190. First caller with the correct answer wins that tanning certificate, which, by the way, is worth over $100. Nice little gift we're giving away. Which U.S. state's name is misspelled on the Liberty Bell? All right, stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. One more time, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my special guest, Zach Beach. Our second trivia question, which U.S. state's name is misspelled on the Liberty Bell?
I'm just gonna guess here with it being in most likely Philadelphia, maybe Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and I think when they say it's misspelled, I think they had spelled it differently back then. But that's right, Pennsylvania. Very good. All right, so far you're batting 500 here. The last question's kind of tough. All right. So Zach, first of all, what are you offering our listeners here? Like, first of all, how do they get a hold of you? And you're on as a guest to inform people, but
Sure.
you probably would like something from the audience as well.
Well, anytime that we're out speaking on podcasts, I'm actually traveling right now. Second live event, or actually third live event in the last 3 weeks down here in Memphis right now. We know that creative financing is extremely popular now. I mean, it's necessary, especially with today's current market. And fortunately, it is absolutely necessary. Unfortunately, too many people are probably now doing it and probably doing it wrong. So me and my business partner were very adamant this year to say we're going to get on the road, we're going to get on podcasts, we're going to train people the right way to do creative financing. That way we can keep legislation positive when it comes to our real estate investing, right? So when we look at creative financing, I really want to put not only this book in people's hands, but I want them to see our system and model when it comes to creative financing. Because look, we've done hundreds and approaching thousands of these deals across 80 plus markets. And we've been doing it and doing it right. And that's extremely important. So let's make sure that all the audience members here get a copy of our first book, which is Real Estate on Your Terms. So if you go to wickedsmartbooks.com/Edward Brown, that is wickedsmartbooks.com/Edward Brown. We'll go ahead and ship it out to you for free.
Well, appreciate that, Zach. I'm sure the audience would love to hear that. Next question here is, how do you go from cold calling to CEO of an Inc. 5000 company?
Evolution, right? I am a prime example of exactly what we do in our Wicked Smart community. These are people that we buy and sell real estate deals with all across the country doing creative financing. And I was like the guinea pig, like the original one, because when I first came into the family business, I started from the ground up and we were really building and doing a handful of deals a month. And then eventually, as I stepped in and learned the cold calling and then brought some of that new age to the company where we started incorporating CRMs and then incorporating growing and scaling the front end acquisition. And then as we continue to evolve, we were able to then scale that and doing about 4 to 10 deals per month and then built up a really nice portfolio. And then we took those systems and then started bringing it to people all across the country. So it really just came through an evolution of learning the skill sets within this business. And then once I was able to step into almost every single position within the business, that then allowed me to then be able to train people as they continue to fill those seats. So just like each person that we work with in our community, they want to go from like that solopreneur to that CEO position because not everybody wants to get stuck in the original acquisition side of real estate. That's not the sexy part of real estate, right? That's the really hard part. It's communicating, it's script work, it's hours on the phone talking with people and solving problems. But eventually we want to get people just like myself in that evolution to then start managing people and start building a portfolio and then managing the portfolio so that way they can eventually step out of that W-2 position. And that's the exact path that I took as well.
So how would, how did you like cold calling? I mean, you don't just knock on your neighbor's door. Like who do you cold call to begin with?
Just like that. So just like that joke that we listened to earlier, right? With the father-in-law thing. I wish that was the scenario where my father-in-law said, hey, you're going to have 50% of the company. You just got to go start doing stuff. No, instead, we ate what we killed. He was just starting to build this business. He handed me a list of expired listings
Gotcha.
with a simple form and said, start making phone calls.
Gotcha. Okay, so that was the cold call list. I got it.
So in between bartending late at night and then personal training early in the morning, I would then be cold calling for a couple hours a day. And I did that for about 4 to 6 months until eventually I burned the ships at both ends. So when it came to cold calling, it was really understanding a script and then communicating with people on a consistent basis and then building out that pipeline.
Well, good for you. That's awesome to, it's not, it's funny because, well, you're still a young man, but a lot of these kids, they go like, okay, I want to start at being the CEO today, and it's like, wait a minute. You got to start a little bit somewhere, kind of understanding the business, so I'm proud of you, my son, proud of you. So let's see here. We got to go to another break. And this will be our last trivia question break. What country could you rent? Now, this is going back to 2011. I don't have any statistics past then or up to date. But back in 2011, what country could you rent for one night for $70,000? I don't know how that works. How do you rent a country? But apparently there was a country that you could actually rent for one night in 2011 for $70,000. I don't know. Maybe you become the mayor or something for the night and stay at whatever hotel you want. I don't get it. But that's I know it's a very odd question. Call 888-912-11. 888-912-1190. First caller with the correct answer wins that tanning certificate. Don't touch that dial. The best of investing. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. Edward Brown here along with Zach Beach. And our third trivia question. In 2011, what country could you rent for one night for $70,000?
I wish I knew the answer here. I'm guessing it's an island, a small country, but.
No, actually, no, it is a small country, Liechtenstein.
Okay, fair. I would never guess that one.
I got to look into that and say, okay, what is it like to rent a whole country for one night for 70 grand? I wonder if anyone's ever done it. I don't know. But let's see here. Now, let's talk about the current real estate market. How are you capitalizing on the current real estate market?
Oh, it is it is set up perfectly right now. I've actually seen the most amount of deals I've seen in my entire decade of doing real estate investing is now. And because the current real estate market is set up, not only just like the real estate market, but the people's personal finances are in a dire strain right now. I interviewed a good friend of mine, Sean Farr, who owns Land Voice, which is a huge data company. And they gave us some pretty interesting statistics. It's the highest amount of business default rates businesses defaulting on their loans since 2008. It's the highest amount of credit card default rates for personal people since 2011. You have high interest rates, right? They were settling somewhere in the sevens. I know they're down now to the mid sixes. You have an affordability problem when it comes to properties. So you have all of these dynamics that make it really hard for the average American to actually purchase properties. I think it's 70% of Americans have a 650 credit score or less. So when we actually go buy creative financing deals, we end up working with people that can't qualify for bank loans, and we sell our properties on rent to own. That's how we've developed our 3 payday system. That's where we've really built out this business model. So once we acquire a property, we now have the solution to all of those people that in those challenging scenarios. And when you're actually working with the Americans that are in these financial challenges, like behind on payments, we now have the solution for that as well, like buying properties subject to the existing loan, which I know we didn't hit on too much today, but that's a way for us to capture and utilize loans that were given to us given to the sellers many years back and that are good interest rates, and also help a seller step out of a challenging situation and then be able to move on. So by utilizing these creative financing strategies, we're now able to supply a really big solution to North America that's going through a lot of challenges when it comes to the everyday American.
Let's get into that for just a minute about subject to, or if there's already, let's say someone owns a house but does have a mortgage and they're interested in selling.
Yeah. So the way that subject to deal works is, if you were going to go buy a property traditionally, right, you'd go to a bank and you'd get a new loan to pay off the original seller. Well, and when we buy a property subject to the existing loan, what we do is we'll go buy that property and we'll keep that mortgage in place. If you've ever closed on a property, even if it's your own home, I believe it's section like 321. It's somewhere in the threes. It's actually on the closing documents that say subject to. So the mortgage just goes there. So what we then do is we then close on the property and we make payments on the seller's behalf. This allows us to actually profit from deals or create deals that actually make money for the investor and also help the seller get out of a challenging situation, because the interest rates are lower on those, which allow you to cash flow. Where in today's market, if we would have to go get a new bank loan at 7%, that is not going to be a good real estate investment for anybody. So by utilizing the current debt, it allows you to make money from it.
So how do you inform the bank that this has happened, or
good question?
Do you pay a fee to assume it, or you just don't tell them anything and you just send the payments to them?
Good question. So we aren't assuming, because that means that would break one of our rules. I mean, be personally guaranteeing debt. So we actually acquired the property in a trust because the Garn-St. Germain Act of 1982 states that you can transfer ownership without a due on sales clause being called. Look, I'm not an attorney. This is what our attorneys told us to do. So then we go ahead and acquire it in a trust. Remember, when we're buying properties subject to, on the opposite side of seller financing, right? Seller financing is they're in a good financial position. Subject to tends to be they're in a financial challenge. We're more trying to protect the seller than we are trying to protect us, because the seller's trying to get out of a bad situation. So by acquiring it in that trust, then the bank isn't typically going to go look any further after they see that there's a trust. We are not calling it informing the bank.
Wilma and Fred Flintstone own the house, and now it's going to the ABC Trust. They don't look and say, wait a minute, Wilma and Fred have nothing to do with this trust. They usually don't look at that far. I guess it depends on what the name of the trust is.
Most banks, remember, if you do you have your own mortgage on your private? Just make this example. Do you have a mortgage on your home?
I do. Yeah.
Is the original mortgage that was provided the same servicing company that it is today?
No, it's not.
Yeah, so they're typically like sold 4 times down the line. They have no idea who owns the property anyways. They just want to make sure that the payments are paid on time.
Good point.
Um,
Yeah.
so when we look at this, it's not that that a due on sales clause can't be called or an acceleration clause. That's what everybody
Yeah.
worries about. They worry about is this legal? It is legal. It's not. It's a contractual issue between the original seller and the bank, right? That says that you have to pay it off. And it is very rare if a due on sales clause is called, especially if you are catching up payments and or if you are making payments on time. Because the banks, I actually did a whole YouTube video on this. It costs the bank somewhere between like $60,000 and $80,000 to foreclose on a property. So the bank doesn't want to do that. They just want to continue to get paid on the
I was gonna
interest.
say, as long as they're getting paid, they're probably going to be happy.
So it is very rare that that does happen, right? And if a due on sales clause does get called, I actually had an attorney that was on our mastermind call that actually beat a due on sales clause.
Oh, really? Okay, I want to hear about that. Okay, stay with us, audience. The Best of Investing. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my special guest, Zach Beach of Smart Real Estate Coach. Let's see here, Zach. What is the transformational process to help W-2 employees become real estate investors?
I love this question because most people that are interested in real estate investing, at least that we work with, are interested in either leaving their W-2 job or creating a better lifestyle for themselves. And what we've discovered over the past, say, 10 or 11 years is that there's a lot of small little nuances that come into play, but really it's what we call our genius model. And that is really there's 3 components when it comes to helping somebody transform. Number one, and is the biggest thing, and I know it's completely overused, is mindset. But if you are a W-2 employee and you're trying to build your own business, there is a lot of things that you're going to have to transform through, such as certain behaviors, risk tolerance, attitude. There's so many little small nuances that helps you eventually become a real estate investor. And one major thing out of that is really developing your why, because it's not easy to be a real estate investor. It can be simple, but it's not easy. So we focus on the mindset, and we got to constantly help these real estate investors evolve. Once we've identified and helped them work through that, then it's all about the skill set. There's certain things we talked about, some of them earlier, which could be communication, right? Being able to speak to a seller, ask the seller the right questions, and then also on the back end, speak to a buyer, ask the buyer the right questions. And then the skill set to be able to structure deals, and then eventually be able to structure your portfolio and manage that portfolio. And then the third thing is, after we have the right mindset and the right skill set, then it's about putting those systems in place, right? Like your legal systems, your CRM and your lead gen systems, et cetera. So it's all about really nailing down those 3 components. And then the truth is, what they always say is like, what got you here, is it going to get you there? So then we just have to go back to the top and help you evolve within your growth mindset to then get and impact your next set of skills that you're going to need. And then eventually the next set of systems that need to be in place. And if we just keep working that, eventually we can evolve and help them transform.
Okay. We have a quick minute here. Do you want to tell us a fun little success story?
Sure. Do you want me to talk about a deal, or do you want me to talk about a student?
Let's talk about a deal.
Okay, fair. One of the first deals that I ever did, and this one always sticks out in my mind because when you're really working a real estate business, when I first got started, like I didn't realize the impact that it was going to make upon like the seller and the buyer. I just knew the impact it was going to make on my family, right? I go buy a piece of real estate, and I make money from it. One of this gentleman, he lived out in Indiana, and he owned a secondary, like his family owned property in Connecticut. And as I was prospecting, he was on an expired listing list. As I was prospecting, I ended up having a great conversation with him. His he was going through a family event. His daughter ends up passing away. So they
Ugh.
have this property that's in Connecticut that they never want to go see again. And he tried the traditional market. That's why he was expired listing, and he didn't know what to do. He thought he was going to have to keep flying back and forth to Connecticut, and really hold on to this like life event, this drama that was happening in his family. So when I was having a conversation, was able to present him some options. He was ecstatic. So we ended up structuring a nice seller financing deal. So it was very profitable for us, but also it was able to help him move on as well. And we see this happen on a monthly basis now, not only locally but nationally as well.
Wow. Zach, give out your information one more time before we cut out for the day.
Yeah, go ahead and go to our website, wickedsmartbooks.com/Edward Brown. That's wickedsmartbooks.com/Edward Brown. And then you can find us on all of YouTube channels at Smart Real Estate Coach.
All right. Here's our thoughts for the day. And again, Zach, thanks for being our guest. Our thoughts for the day. Why do you never want to be kidnapped by a gang of mimes? Because they'll do unspeakable things to you. And let's see here. And a prophecy class was canceled due to unforeseen circumstances. Got to think about that one. All right. Tune in next week to The Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away more free prizes for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long.